So we signed on with him, and it was a hell of a ride. I tell the story in the book because Arthur wasn't at that particular meeting. That when Trump asked us at the end of the meeting if we would serve as senior economic advisors for the campaign, we were stunned, and we didn't even know what to say really. And Larry broke the silence by saying, "Well, we can't work for you, sir, because we're for free trade and you're not." And he said, "Well, I'm not against free trade. I just want better trade deals and so on." And then he said something very interesting. He said, "Look, we're not going to probably agree on everything on the trade issue, but I still want your help on these other issues." And that impressed me, and we signed on. It was a great time. I mean, one of the things I would just say that's that if you really want to understand America and what makes this country tick, outside of Washington D.C. and New York City, you go out on a campaign. And we had the time of our life, working with Trump and just meeting people. That was the other thing, Bill, that really turned me on to Trump, is Trump was tapping. The Republican Party was clueless. Yeah. They were clueless. They didn't know what was going on in their own party, among their own voters. There was so much frustration and that's why Romney lost. He didn't understand the Republican voters. And Trump, and look, again, there are things I don't like at all about Donald Trump, but one thing I really do like is he has a finger on the pulse of millions and millions and millions of Americans.
But since we want to talk about Trumponomics, he's not known to read a lot. And I bet he'd not read your book or Art's book or Larry's book.
Yeah.
But he probably watched Larry's show.
Yeah.
On
right. He watched a lot of TV.
Now, how did he end up picking? Because a lot of us were very concerned that since his background was not particularly political, he could end up being a political economic liberal. He didn't. How do you think he found the three of you who are exactly, in my view, the right three people to find to advise him on this? I mean, was it an instinct?
I mean, Trump pays for his whole adult life. He's been paying very close attention to American politics, and policy. And one thing that impressed Arthur and I and Larry was that he knew this stuff. He did. He said, well, when we said we had this dispute with him on trade, he said, okay, maybe we're not going to agree on that, but I want your help writing the tax cut. And he turned to Arthur and said, you wrote the Reagan tax plan. I want you to put something together like that for me. And
by Friday,
we put a plan together. One story that I tell in the book that's kind of a fun one is that when we showed him this chart, he likes to look at charts, and things like that. He's not going to read a 300-page book. And we showed him this chart. The U.S. tax rate is way up here, and the rest of the world's down here, and there's a 20% gap here. And we said, this is a 20% Head Start program for other countries we're competing with. And Larry said, and therefore, sir, we're going to recommend to you that you campaign for a 20% business tax rate. And I'll never forget, Trump sits back in his chair and he says, no, I'm not going to do that. And we were surprised. He said, no, I don't want 20%. I want 15. I want 15. Now, the reason that's interesting is that, we said, look, Donald, if you want us to sell 15% business tax rate, we'll do that. Every meeting, Bill, from that meeting until we passed the law on December 21st of 2017, every meeting, Trump, 15, 15, 15. He'd talk to members of Congress. I'm not taking 1 percentage point over 15. Well, at that last meeting, Mitch McConnell comes in and says, Mr. President, I'm so sorry I failed you. I couldn't get you 15% on that business tax rate. Would you take 20%? And Trump said, I'll take that in a New York minute. And I'm convinced if, he taught me
he knew where to
Larry
start.
something.
Yeah,
if he had taken Larry Kudlow's and my advice and started at 20%, we would have probably ended up at 25 or 26.
Yeah.
So he's a great negotiator.
So he also had the same point of view about economic growth. You came in and said, we think we can get at least 3% economic growth. And he said, no, you're wrong.
He folded his hand and he said, I want 5.
5.
And that's a great point, Bill, that you mentioned about Trump, as you've gotten to know him yourself. There's two things about Trump and Reagan that I think are the same. There are a lot of differences between, and look, I think Ronald Reagan belongs on Mount Rushmore, but I do think there are two things that are in common about the two. Number one, that optimism about America, and that's where liberals, I think, are so wrong about America. They are such declinists and they're so dismal and they're so, they're dire about the future. Trump is a total optimist about the American potential. I love that about him. And the second thing, by the way, Bill, that is similar about Reagan and Trump is that both of them were always underestimated by their opponents. And, remember people say, oh, Reagan's a dummy and he's just a grade B actor. He doesn't know anything. And they say the same things about Trump, and to their detriment, because both Reagan and Trump were winners. They knew how to win.